Hello and welcome to the Futurist Letters show. My name is Cairo Smith. I'm the founder and the editor-in-chief of Futurist Letters, the journal. I have finally gotten around to setting up my correct reference monitor, so hopefully everything looks nice on my side. If you are one of those people who watches with video, if you are one of those people who just puts us on as you go around doing your chores or your commute, that makes a lot of sense. Thanks for integrating us into your busy day. So please continue watching and listening wherever is comfortable for you. This episode does not have an after show because it is one of those book club style roundtables. And we are going to be discussing three short stories. I think we said two of them. We said Beyond Lies the Wub by Philip K. Dick, and we said The Drowned Giant by J.G. Ballard. But we added another Dick, surprise second Dick, not by its cover, by by PKD. That is another story in the Wub lore. So if you have not read that one and you would like to, it will only take a couple minutes of your time. But also I think there's a certain delight in just sort of listening to what other people have to say. There's an experience that I sometimes have with book reviews on Substack where it's so good that it sort of like deflates my urgency in needing to read the actual text. So that being said, and I think it was actually Lillian who said that about Henry Begler and his essays. So I should probably mention we have not just Kenny White in the house today. Hey, Kenny.
Hey, what's up, Cairo?
We also have the one and only Lillian Wang Solonic here with us to double co-host for the first time. Hi, Lillian.
Hey, Cairo. Hey, Kenny. Glad to be here.
Very exciting. So we are talking about these three stories, two Dicks and a Ballard, and then I'm sure we're just gonna go into wherever else our interests lead. So with that being said, I figure for a little color, I'll just ask you guys as interesting online people, what have you been up to lately outside of podcasting? I guess Lillian, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I guess mostly I've been making my way through Ulysses for like months now. It's been a long time I've been reading this book. And I've been working on the second draft of my novel. Been a little bit of a slog, both of those things. But otherwise, I've been spending a lot of time with my puppy, who's turning into a delightful young dog.
That's good. That's good. Glad you're raising her right. Is there anything you can tell us about either Ulysses or your own novel?
Um, So I think I'm almost halfway through Ulysses now, and I think I can safely say that anyone who says that they like the book who isn't like Irish or has like extensive knowledge of Irish history is lying. Um, have you guys read Ulysses?
I like washed out of it in high school.
I have
I,
not, and I think we should make it the next book review
oh my God.
book.
I think I went into the high school library as like a sophomore and I said, give me the hardest book in here. And they gave me Ulysses and I read like four chapters and I said, this is not for me. But I should give it another go.
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting through it very slowly, just like purely out of spite at this point, because there are I don't think of myself as someone who's like afraid of challenging books. Um, but like this is just it's hostile. It's like he does not want anyone to read this book or understand it. Um, so yeah, I don't know. And there's like little bits of like really beautiful prose that are sprinkled throughout, but it's really just barely enough to keep you going. Yeah, it feels
How does it
to
compare
me.
to like Infinite Jest, which is another one of those like I read it
I
to
think
read it books?
I okay, so I don't think Infinite Jest is actually like a difficult book. I think people just like to say that because it's very long. Um, but
Right.
it's not like hard to read. It's very I found it very like breezy, easy to read, um, and like fun to read. And you
In
know,
comparison to Ulysses.
well just in general, but
Right, right.
especially in comparison to Ulysses. But
Is it possible that like Ulysses is like the literary equivalent of virtue signaling, where like if you read it and say you like it, it's kind of like saying like, oh, like I recycle my plastic or something, where you do it just to indicate that like you're a literateur.
yeah, like you checked that box, you did your time. Um, and I think like there's I'm sure there's like value in having like struggled through it. But if someone is like, "Oh, I read it and I loved every word," like that the person's a goddamn liar. 'Cause like you read every single like it's just incomprehensible for like large portions of it. Um, yeah,
One
it's not fun. But
one
then
of my
there are
favorite things
some
about
delightful
you,
bits.
Lillian, that I think makes you such a valuable member of the literary community on Substack is that there are circumstances where other people are afraid to say that they don't like something because they're afraid of getting hit with oh well that just means you didn't get it, ergo you're dumb. And they're so afraid of getting called dumb that they just like won't attack like any part of the canon. And you're like, as we saw with your whole Shakespeare thing. Um Not that Shakespeare is difficult, but I feel like people have a fear of attacking Shakespeare, or not even
They
attacking, just
did
like expressing anything shy of enthusiasm.
many did call me dumb for not liking
I
Shakespeare.
know, but people like dumb people calling you dumb is not like evidence of dumbness. This,
I mean, even smart people calling you dumb isn't evidence of dumbness.
yeah, that's true. That's true. And I mean, I feel like dumbness, if anything, sometimes just means you're like operating at the edge of your existing knowledge base, which is a good way to get smarter. So,
Or you know that meme with like the bell-shaped curve, and you have like the idiot Wojak, like the Jedi Woj,
yeah.
and then like the midbrain. I feel like, sometimes the dumb take is really the smart take, and the middle of the road take is really the dumb take.
Certainly possible. Certainly possible. I feel like that meme for me has about like 50% accuracy, and then the other half of the time it's just like an actual dumb take that's like using it as cover. So I guess that's a
Yeah.
decent batting average. I don't know. And then do we get to hear anything about the your manuscript?
Oh, no, not now.
Okay, good.
Not at this time.
I was hoping you'd say that because then it would whet people's appetites for the next episode. Kenny, what has been occupying your interest lately?
What indeed? I've been working on a new startup idea, filling it out, specking it out, doing research. And I've also moved to a new location. For avid watchers of the show, you'll notice this is a different background than what you've seen the last couple episodes. Yeah, between moving and let's just say foundering, pun intended. Um, my schedule's been pretty full.
I like that foundering. Um, that's got potential. Okay. Okay. Well, I guess I'll ask since I asked Lillian, do we get to know anything about what you're working on in particular?
In particular, it's in the crypto space. That's sort of where my previous company was founded. And specifically, I'm looking in the decentralized finance space. Uh,
Hmm.
And I guess the high level takeaway or theme is that crypto, like any financial system, is kind of a dangerous, risky place, and things break all the time unexpectedly. And we're going through a process where all of Wall Street, all of finance is incrementally and but inexorably migrating into the blockchain technology stack. And one of the financial services that doesn't really exist on the blockchain natively is like actually it's all like risk transference. So like things like insurance, that type of stuff doesn't really exist. And so there's going to be a huge demand in the future for ways of mitigating the risk of decentralized financial products. And that's basically the space that I'm playing around in.
Cool. Well, I could geek out with that with you about that for like an hour, but I think maybe we'll jump into the canon of Western science fiction here, which is kind of like a blockchain. You know, things get written to it, and then it just gets added on and added on. I think maybe this is a good place for us to jump into our stories. Do we want a wub first, or do we want a giant first? I feel like maybe we giant first because I think there's maybe more to say about the wub. Um, okay, that's my decision. Oh, probably should say what I've been up to. You know, various things, I guess.
You had a viral,
All right.
you had a
I
viral.
was not expecting these stories to be so fleshy, Lillian. Oh, yeah, full disclosure, Lillian is the one that suggested these stories. There was definitely like a meat and sinew motif.
Yeah, that was unintentional. I didn't realize when you asked for suggestions, it was uh so Cairo just like threw this in the Futurist Letters Discord. Was like, "Hey, what's a short story?" And like parenthesis like a good one. Um and I just said
I
like
don't
the
even think I
first
said that it was for the show.
no. Um yeah, so I didn't realize I was like recommending a book club pick. But yeah, like the first I just wrote like the first three that came to mind, which were Beyond Lies the Wub by PKD, Hinterlands by William Gibson, which was not selected, but it's excellent and you should read it. Um, and The Drowned Giant by J.G. Ballard. And I don't know, I don't really know what like, you know, I guess there was like some subconscious grouping of those three, but as I was rereading the stories um for the show, I was like, oh wow, this is uh a nice theme running through this. Um, but yeah, very, very fleshy.
I guess I'll say with the drowned giant. And a great thing I'd like to ask that it could come off as confrontational, but I don't mean it that way. Why do you like this story?
I haven't read a whole lot of J.G. Ballard. I've read a number of his short stories and his autobiography. Um, but I really wanted to like love J.G. Ballard because he's one of these names that you hear from people who are like, it's like the hidden curriculum of sci-fi and like, experimental literature, and J.G. Ballard is like the king of this. Um, and I found that as I was going through some of the short stories, I didn't love them. I didn't love the way that they made me feel. I think he has a lot of stories that feel very like claustrophobic and they're like intense in this way that is also sort of like dissociated and distant. Um like stories about like mega cities that go on for like that like span the entire planet, and like people trying to find the edge of the city, or like trying to find a piece of real estate in a city that has like a New York City that's got, you know, billions of people. Um, and it's like not a I don't know, it didn't like excite my sense of wonder in the way that I sort of look for when I'm reading science fiction, I think. But The Drowned Giant stood out to me as very different from his other modes of writing. So he has that sort of like paranoid, frenetic energy, like overpopulation kind of story. And then he has this like really experimental, like fucked up weird shit, which I also wanted to like more than I think I did at the time that I was reading them. Um, like this
So
is the
you
guy
would not
who when I
describe this as experimental, fucked up, or weird in relative terms compared to the other edges of Ballard?
yeah no I would not. It's I think it's written in this sort of like this voice of like a gentleman anthropologist, sort of like the previous century, and it's given a sort of there's like a mythic vibe to it, right? Like encountering something that is that is bizarre and unexplained, and I guess we should say that it's the
Yeah.
central thing is a giant humanoid washes up on a beach, and then people come to like gawk at it, and there's no explanation of where it came from, and bystanders eventually interact with it in increasingly, I guess, disturbing ways. Um,
And yes, until it's like subsumed into the society. The whole thing sort of felt, and by the way, listener, you can just search this and you can find the story online very easily. The Drowned Giant. The whole thing had this sort of dream logic to me. I don't know, it felt very surreal. I wanted to know, Kenny, what your outsider impressions were on this as you read it.
It's kind of one of those puzzling stories that it's like its message or moral, if it exists, is not really made explicitly. Um, I thought it was interesting how the giant starts out as like this Greco-Roman like sculpture type figure with almost certain perfection quality to it, and then it's slowly its corporeal form decomposes and gets deconstructed, and then by the end of it, it's effectively just a whale carcass. And that transformation from almost statuesque to dead whale like penis. Um, Speaking of dick jokes, uh, it's I don't know. There's something. It's almost like sometimes when you have these sort of these like subconscious like not premonitions. What am I thinking of? Like these ideas or feelings or works, emanations, I guess, from the subconscious. Sometimes they wash up on shore to the conscious realm, and it's almost like waking up from a dream. It all feels something you're kind of beautiful and connected to, but then by the end of the day or the day after, it's almost like you just remember like the bits and pieces of this experience or emanation that you had in the conscious world. And I
Yeah.
guess in some ways the giant felt like an extended metaphor for that, but connecting it to the corporeal form.
I thought it was interesting the way they treat the giant. The giant is obviously not a typical occurrence. The people that interact with the giant are not familiar with this. And yet, it's never it doesn't seem like an epochal change in our understanding of reality. Like sure the jawbone goes to the Natural History Museum, but by the end of the story people like it's a footnote. It's like people are interested in it but not in a way that actually engages with who it is as an individual or like what it could mean. They're engaging with it in this very kind of like banal, literally like chopping it apart,
yeah, and like breaking it down for fertilizer,
Yeah. It made me wonder
profiting
like
off of it.
not to get ahead of ourselves with the wub, but all these stories that we read very clearly, like the author is very preoccupied with death and like what it would mean to continue on in some form after death, you know? Like it made me wonder if like it's almost like death of the author and the idea that sure you live as a human being for a little bit as an artist, but then you live much longer as a body of work that the public literally just pulls apart and does whatever they want with, you know? I mean, maybe this was a source of anxiety for these authors, how how their body of work would be used, you know, in their absence.
Kind of reminds me of was the Man in the Sea, the old Man in the Sea, where he catches this big fish, and by the time he gets it into shore, it gets devoured by sharks. It's just a skeleton, and a couple of like gringo tourists are walking past it. They're like, "What is that?" And they're like, "Oh, like the guy said it's a shark," when really it was eaten by sharks. And yeah, it's
I would,
kind of similar experience, or it's the thought that Hemingway was having, where like, man, what's gonna be made of my work once I'm gone?
yeah, yeah. I was also reminded, and I sent you guys this video of the Oregon whale carcass that they blew up with dynamite. That was in 1970, and I don't know, I don't remember offhand the year that this was written, but I assume it was the mid 70s.
No, it was 1964.
64. All right.
Yeah.
Well, that blows a hole in my argument. He, I guess, was presaging the exploding whale, in a way. I don't know.
I was
Um,
disappointed that the newscaster didn't reference the story.
the Ballard story? Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Come on, local KZI news anchor. Um, it is sort of this sense, like, it's the literalization of this question of, like, we have this big, interesting thing, but, like, we don't really know what to do with it as a populace. You know, it's almost how we treat like weird artists or like aberrant individuals, founders, provocateurs, you know, especially if they can't be slotted into like a faction. It's like, well, I guess we'll chop them up and use the interesting parts for something. I don't know. Do you see it in a different way, Lillian? I mean, is there a different reading you have of the significance of the story?
I mean, as you're saying this, I don't know, I'm like nodding along that that sounds, you know, that sounds right to me, but I don't I wasn't thinking about like a more like this I guess I was thinking more um less about like this as a metaphor for art or artist and more as a like uh I guess sort of a more literal reading of it as like what is our first contact as humans like with something that is so vast and different from ourselves. And I think that can be I mean you can go like two ways with it, sort of what Kenny was talking about, like this like, you know, leviathans that we drag up from our unconscious and are like grappling with in our lives. But also and that sort of goes with, you know, like the inner space stuff that I think Ballard was sort of known for. But then also uh more literally, like if we make first contact with aliens, I mean there's I guess I don't know, not to get ahead of ourselves, but like in the Dick stories, like we're talking about encountering like an intelligent life form, then basically just like killing it and eating it. And I think that uh, that sort of thing is like worth thinking about. I sort of have a little bit of a theory, like we've kind of already um, discovered aliens, but like no one cares. Or if we do, if we do in the near future have like proof of if we meet aliens, like it's not going to change anything the way that I think earlier generations of sci-fi authors thought, like, oh, this is going to change our civilization, this is going to change our, you know, theology and everything about our
There's even
lives.
a
But
meme
it's
about this. There's like the gray coming down from the saucer, like encountering some dude like who's just like it's like a Wojak out for a walk with a cigarette, and the gray is like, like are you not shocked? And the Wojak is like, man, I got a lot going on right now. Um,
yeah,
and maybe we do feel that way in our current age. It wouldn't shock us. We're already so irony poisoned or disillusioned.
yeah. I guess that with the Ballard story, maybe the analog to like an earlier, well, at least what I think of as an earlier generation. I don't know if it was literally written before it, but like, have you guys read Rendezvous with Rama by Arthur C. Clarke?
A long time ago.
It's it's basically it's like it's a first contact with alien story that is where they're not interfacing directly with the aliens. They're just like encountering a ship that was built by an alien race and like exploring it. Um, so like they're interacting with an artifact, um, and the the whole thing like is suffused with like wonder and it's like I don't know. They find out cool shit. I don't I read a long time ago too. I don't really remember the details, but I think in the same way it's like the in the Drowned Giant, um, there's a group of humans that are interacting with this, this like not the entity itself because it's dead, but proof that there is some, incredible race of, people or, beings. And their reaction is not wonder, it's just like cheap sideshow gawking.
Yeah. I'm realizing as you speak, because it does make you uncomfortable the way that the people in the story treat the giant's corpse. We impose upon the giant this sort of sense of nobility, you know, the beauty, and just sort of by virtue of it being enormous, it's like, wow, this great creature that we then little people disrespect. But we don't know the character of the giant. I mean, the giant could have been a total bozo, you know? The giant could have been just like a really like rude, foolish, foppish member of its society. And yet when we see this huge silent thing, we can't help but like ascribe dignity to it in our mind.
Yeah, well, I mean, the narrator, like, talks about this. He's, like, basically doing, like, phrenology on the corpse of this giant, and he's like, "Oh, he had a noble nose, and he
Yeah.
looked like a Homeric hero." Um, but
I
then,
noticed
like,
there was like
later
an
on
Odysseus name drop in both of the stories. I was like, oh,
yeah.
Lillian the classics. I see you here.
Yeah, no, I wish I had, again, I wish I had remembered that and done that on purpose, but it was,
All roads lead back to Ulysses, Cairo.
Oh, yeah. Oh no. Um, gosh. Well, it's a trippy story. There's also the narrator himself, which we haven't spent a lot of time talking about. And I think there's a good possibility that the narrator is an unreliable character in his account of this. I mean, he's clearly infatuated with the corpse in irrational ways. I don't know. Did either of you have any impressions of the narrator that are worth mentioning, separate from the giant?
I mean, I guess it read to me like a first person travelogue from, like, an early National Geographic. Um, I don't know if
Yeah.
you've spent any time reading those, but, like, they're, like, going to places and calling people troglodytes and stuff. I don't know. But,
I guess that's a good segue into the dick of it all, which is that I was
wait,
shocked.
first, sorry, before we
Yeah, go
move
ahead.
on, you asked me why I like the story. Did you like the story?
Did I like the story? My immediate answer is no, but I don't think I have like a grievance or a qualm with the story. I think that he was probably interfacing with some life experience that others would really connect to and find universalizing. Like, wow, I totally get how the author felt when he saw that giant, or what he's trying to say. I don't know. I feel like I'm maybe missing the like preloaded software to really vibe with the story. But I don't have like a problem with it. I don't know. That's an
Mm.
interesting
Even
question.
though the Oregon whale story was like part
Yeah,
of
but
your
that's
personal
so
history.
farcical to me. And I didn't find anything farcical about this. It was like completely unfunny on purpose.
My sense when I finished reading that story was that this was really just like a elaborate, like not elaborate, but like a almost like a Save the Whales story where it's like, yeah, well, like we don't assign dignity to whales, but really they're deserving of dignity. Like the way it ends, where everything
Yeah.
is like everyone remembers it as if it were a whale. And I don't know, it felt like, oh man, Ballard really had a moment with a whale, and but
There
talk
was
about
a certain misanthropic quality to the story, I guess. I don't know. It felt pretty bearish on human behavior. And like in this very like mid 60s way, the narrator sort of puts himself above it all just by sort of putzing around doing nothing, you know? Like, look at all these people doing business and science and like they're like little ants. And I'm just kind of like vibing with the corpse. You know what I mean? Like, okay, like then what, dude? I guess he wrote about it. I guess that counts for something. I see you thinking, Lillian.
Yeah, I guess I don't know. I felt like it. I guess like I've said, it had the vibe of more of like an early 20th century narrator, where he's not. I guess I'm not sure what you mean by like mid 60s
Um,
navel gazing or
what do I mean? He seemed to be offering a lot of disdain for these various components of society that interacted with the giant in a way that was, gauche or disrespectful. But I wasn't really sure like what the alternative vision was that he was offering for like how one should properly interact with the giant corpse.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, he like gets up on it. He's like
Yeah, he
walking
like
on
gets
it
up on it
too.
and like sits on it.
Yeah, and like steps through it and releases foul gas. I don't know. I was also I was getting like uh do you know have you guys read Brothers Karamazov?
No, it's on my list.
Um there's a there's a famous chapter in there where there's a like uh this religious figure, Father Zosima, who dies, and he was like a saintly figure in life, and he dies, and his body is like being displayed or whatever for the mourners to come, and then like everyone is thinking like, oh, if he was really as good a person as he everyone thought he was, like he's not going to stink, like God will preserve his body, and he won't like undergo the typical process of decay, and
Right.
then over the course of like the uh Disney whatever the like observance period where his body is just out, like a smell starts to come, and like people are gossiping about it, and like going and running to tell people like, oh, like it's proof that he actually wasn't as good as everyone said he was, and like all these rumors start flying. um and the I don't know, I guess the now whenever I think of like whenever I encounter like in literature like the smell of decay, it makes me think of that, and like this idea that even something so seemingly noble and pure can turn into
We
something
take
foul.
such effort in our lives to keep clean and presentable and not disgust people. We do it as a symbol of respect. We do it to be accepted. You know what I mean? We use it as a social signal. We make it part of our image. But when we die, if we consider the corpse that we leave behind to be the final incarnation of ourselves, which I prefer not to, but I guess subjectively it kind of is, then basically the final image that you leave the people in your life with is one in which you have no control over those things, physical things that can be so off-putting, decay, etc. Which I guess
Cairo,
is why we have ritual practice for dealing with corpses.
have you heard of, and Lillian, have you heard of those? I think it's in Japan. They have these monks where they dedicate their lives to meditation and that type of stuff, and then and they get close to death, they'll start drinking this, like, I don't know, cedar oil concoction tea, and over the course of several months of meditation and drinking, eating no food and drinking nothing but this tea, it like starts to preserve their bodies. And then by the time they almost like turn into living mummies, and when they expire, they actually don't change because their bodies have been preserved by this concoction. I thought it was like made up, and then I looked into it, and then actually some of these mummies still exist, and you can go and see them.
Yeah, I have read about that. It's very cool.
They
I have
have
not. That's wild.
some
It kind of
people.
represents the conquering of that fear of decay too. You literally get to skip any step in which you're sort of, a rotting corpse. You go
for, for,
you're pre-embalmed.
for the low price of uh, drinking cedar oil and meditating
Cedar
for
oil and
years.
yeah, it's wild. Um, yeah, corpse. There's a solemn nature to it. Um, I agree that it probably, I don't know, 64 you said, Lillian? That's a little early for Save the Whales. Um, I'm really not sure what he was thinking about.
Yeah, I don't know.
One thing, while we're talking about corpses, especially in the context of the Western canon, I was reading something about how strongly there was a Christian bias against cremation for decades or centuries and centuries. Because the whole thing is like with the end times and like the resurrection, like the rapture, like the corpses, the understanding was they would be physically reanimated. Like, which is why like you don't want to cremate someone. Because like I guess it makes it harder for their corpse to like be lifted from the ground, which is like one reason you have cemeteries. Um like cemetery literally like etymologically is like resting place. Until the rapture. And now, very quickly, this is like collapsed as a preference to be buried instead of cremated. And all of a sudden, Western people seem to be much more okay with cremation in a way that they weren't like 50 to 100 years ago. Is that just practical? Like, I wonder why that's changed.
I mean, I feel like if you have an omnipotent God, then he should be able to like put you together from your ashes,
From your ashes? Yeah.
right? That
Sure,
shouldn't
I
be
mean,
like
if you're just bones
impossible for
anyway,
God.
if you're buried. So, I don't really know. But clearly people are thinking about death and actually I've been having listeners try and get me to have a death researcher on the show for a while to talk about death practices, so could segue into that. But yeah, Kenny, any final thoughts on the drowned giant before we wub?
I say we wub.
I say we wub. Okay, this was crazy. Um, this was like, first off, this made me like rethink like sci-fi not because of the content of the story at all, but just because of how, like, I don't even know how to describe it. Like 19th century, the whole vibe of the first story was like, sure, they're like going to Mars, but they feel like they're like, you know, going to like Kipling's India or something. Like it was like Kipling meets Dr. Seuss. I don't know. What drew you toward this story initially, Lillian?
Yeah, well, I think that's sort of a common um it's like a common idea. I guess I'm thinking of like Ursula Le Guin has a novella called The Word for World is Forest, and it's basically just like 19th century British imperialism, but like transposed into like an interstellar thing. And I think it's a cool idea to think of because even though if everything's high tech, they're on you know spaceships and stuff. The kind of like commerce that you can have is I think more similar to like because the distances are great and uh if we don't have like wormholes or faster than light travel, like it's going to be like shipping something across an ocean. um in the 18th century, it'll be more similar to that than like what we think of as our like global interconnected world. And so what sort of I think that like the economic systems and incentives that rise up on this like new frontier are interesting for sci-fi writers to play around with. Um, but yeah, I guess this the story is I'm not sure that it's like my favorite PKD story, but I feel like it's a significant one. It's the first genre fiction story that he ever published. This is from 1952. He was like 23 years old, and I think he had one um, like literary short story published, and then he had this published, and then just sort of never really succeeded as a like mainstream literary writer um, in his lifetime. But yeah, I like it because it's a little bit like uh conventional if you're like thinking about the sort of like coming out of the golden age of sci-fi. um and like I said, this idea of like a group of people engaging in commerce on a spaceship, that's like a very golden age kind of thing to do. But there's like strangeness that's sort of underneath the surface there. Like he's introducing these ideas and like obsessions with um you know with myth and religion and death and stuff that will come up
Yeah.
throughout his work later on.
It could have been a great Twilight Zone. I was almost seeing it as a Twilight Zone episode as I was reading it.
Yeah, yeah, totally. It's like, yeah, there's a twist at the end in
Hmm.
like the final paragraph.
Someone said like that a short story basically functions like a joke, except it doesn't have to be funny. It can just conjure up some other strong emotion, like, surprise or dread or fear. But yeah, structurally, I felt like it was very much like a joke, the way it was all building up. And I mean, here's the thing, you see it coming, but seeing it coming does not reduce the pleasure of finishing it. You're like, ah, yes, there it is.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, and I think like even I've read this story a few times. Like I knew the twist, but it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't at all diminish. It's delightful to read, even being familiar with it.
Kenny, what did you think?
Well, if the drowned giant was be nice to whales, this one is like don't eat pigs. Um, no, but seriously, I actually really like this book, this short story. I've been a huge PKD fan. I hadn't read this one before. This short story. It's cool. It's his first sci-fi short story. One thing that I've noticed a lot in PKD's works is the emphasis on like empathy and like feeling each other's pain and being awareness and having sympathy for it. Like I think in um your android's dream of electric sheep, that's a big part of it as well. And then you have this one character that I was like, what if like a pig could telepathically communicate to you? What would it say? And what if it was like not just an animal, but some sort of enlightened being conversing with you about literature and myth and religion? Would you be able to look it in the eyes and off it? And then of course there's the twist at the end.
Yeah, I was with you there for the first half of it. I was thinking the same thing. And I think we can spoil the story. It's a short story. People have read it. Go read it. The what is it? What is the name of it? Beyond Lies the Wub? Yeah. Go read it. You can find it online. Um, I actually, and this was sort of refuted by the second web story, but when I got to the end of this one, I thought, oh my God, that animal, like the essence that was speaking through that animal telepathically was not like the what. You know what I mean? Like I was like, oh, that animal had eaten some previous incarnation of the wub and gotten wubbed. And now like it's the wub, like almost like it follows. Like the wub is this like telepathic entity that daisy chains across beings and then it's gonna go to someone else, you know? Um but maybe the pig literally was the wub. I don't know.
That's an interesting interpretation. I took it as, uh, I guess, yeah, I took it as face value, like, the wub is just a right, because he talks about he's like, "Oh, us wubs, we are, we're soft and large, and so we have to
Yeah.
we'd had to develop other defenses," and,
No, and that's
like
and
that,
the
so
second story supports that. I love how little he seems to be concerned with like being irony poisoned. You know? I feel like this is something that you can't really get in short stories today. Like he's willing to just let parts of it be silly, and yet the story itself is still very sincere. You know what I mean? Like he's not worried about people being like, oh, he called this a web. Like I have to get out ahead of people laughing at like the juvenile quality and like, sort of like shit on myself. I don't know. Um, I think that's hard to do because people are so like over socialized now into like how they're gonna come off. Are there any reader or writers that are more contemporary that either of you feel like are able to maintain the sincere in that way?
I always found PKD a little bit goofy.
Mm.
Uh in a
Goofy,
lot of
yeah,
it.
that's a good word for it.
And I think that's one reason why I feel like it his works have done pretty well as literature, but they've done extremely well when they get translated into movies, is because then you have like a team of a Hollywood team going over it and kind of like polishing out, buffing out like the goofy parts of it. Like you read "Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep"? It's an amazing book, right? But there's like certain goofy elements to it, and then you watch like Blade Runner, and that movie is doesn't have a goofy bone in its body. It
No.
feels like, and they're both good, but yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm neutral on the goofiness. Is there any other contemporary? I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
I think the goofiness is, like, central to what makes PKD good, and that's why I think most adaptations of his work fail as adaptations. Like, Blade Runner is cool, but it's not a good adaptation of Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. Um, the mood organ. Do you Kenny, do you remember the mood organ in Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? It's like it's a device, you can dial it to like artificially induce a certain mood or like emotion, and it's there are like it opens with Deckard and his wife like arguing over which mood they should dial for the day. And like that it's really goofy, but I think it's like that's why like we live in a goofy ass world. Like it's it captures something that I think, trying to make a more serious you know, uh adaptation just doesn't manage to do.
But a movie can be goofy, right? So why is it that you can't translate the feeling of PKD to film successfully?
I think, well, so it has been done once. Um the only good PKD adaptation is, sorry, my dog is playing with something really loud right now. Is A Scanner Darkly. Have you
Hmm.
guys read slash seen A Scanner Darkly?
No, it's again on my list.
On my list as well. I say sheepishly.
Okay, I mean, so the book is amazing, and the movie is like it's the only, I would say, the only faithful adaptation of a PKD story or novel that like captures its essence, and like the casting is just perfect. It stars Keanu Reeves, and like Robert Downey Jr. is in it as this like uh really paranoid, whacked out, druggy guy. Um and there's I'm blanking on the names, but it's really good, and it's all um it's by the guy who did Waking Life, um
Yeah, I
that
know him, and I
director.
have seen Waking Life. I don't remember his name.
Yeah.
And we don't have an
Anyway,
intern
it's
to look it up, so we'll just have to be regular people here.
yeah. Um but
It's a
yeah, so
little
it has
nostalgic
been
to
done.
not look something up in the middle of a conversation, I have to say. Sometimes I'm gonna sound like such a old person here, but I feel like when I hang out with people in their early 20s now, and I ponder something out loud, they have a compulsion to look it up. I mean, they almost can't stand to like not immediately look up the answer to something, which I guess in a way is noble, except that they usually read the Gemini answer and then it's wrong.
I think the thing is that people deep down just want to have a conversation with ChatGPT instead of other humans.
Oh, maybe if I were a better conversationalist, I don't know. At least the people listening to this seem to want to listen to human beings. So thanks, guys. Um, it's funny. I feel like of these three stories, the wub number one was my favorite, but I actually have the least to say about it because I feel like it's kind of self-explanatory. I don't know. I don't even know where I would begin, like doing like a Straussian reading of this story. It's very much there on the surface.
I just thought it was pretty hardcore how the captain was eating wub at the end of it.
He just capped
Uh,
the wub and he ate it. Yeah.
kind of. I mean, I'm just trying to think if like a predator like was about to kill and eat me, and then I telepathically stole its body, would I then go and eat myself?
Oh, you mean like the
It's
wub was eating himself
Oh,
in that way?
yeah.
Yeah. Well, didn't that wub like switch bodies, right?
Yeah.
I thought it was like a fusion. Like the captain was still mentally there. He was just sharing his body with the wub.
I don't think so.
You think the captain
I
was
think he
gone?
just like took him over. Yeah, yeah. And yeah,
Interesting.
and he was eating himself, and but if you're a creature that can't really die, if you transcend, you know, physical bodies, then it's like, well, why not? If you hear you taste good, like might as well enjoy the experience.
That's funny.
That's definitely a form of like enlightenment and detachment of the corporeal form that I know I personally have not reached. Uh, I think I would have a really hard time eating a Kenny steak.
Yeah,
Would you eat a human steak? Like if it weren't from you?
I mean, probably not. No. Uh,
I used to. Sorry. I used to have nightmares about cannibalism when I worked in Hollywood. I think I've tweeted about this. I can't explicitly blame Hollywood for this, but I do know that like when I was an intern at like a talent agency and I was going in and, wearing my suit and doing stuff, I would have dreams that I was like invited to like an agency party and they had like human like charcuterie, like prosciutto basically, that they were like really trying to get you to eat. And like that would have been one thing, but like in the dream, like I tried it and I liked it, and then I had to like then they were like pleased with me and I just had to stand there with this like this is something I've done now. Like this is terrible. Um so no, probably not. Having
that's like
experienced how that felt in my dream.
some Hotel California shit there, Cairo.
Yeah. Or something. I don't know. It's maybe just my subconscious being melodramatic, but would you, Lillian?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I could kind of tell from how you asked it. Do the ethics of the sourcing matter to you?
I mean, I wouldn't like kill the person and like be, but like if I were offered it, maybe. I guess it does depend who.
I mean, so say you were like visiting some like tin pot African dictatorship and the president was like having you for dinner and he was like, "Here, this is like the thigh of my political enemy. Like he was a bad guy. Do you want to try it?" Like, would you
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to be rude.
you don't want to
Yeah.
be when in Rome,
You
I
can
guess.
ink a lucrative
Yeah.
resource deal out of this meal because that's different than if it's just
Yeah, let's talk about your energy policy.
yeah. Or here's a thought experiment. Like they're getting to the point where they can grow meat in like a test tube environment, meat cells, and they're starting to like get it and be able to actually create like hamburger type steaks out of it. I don't know if they can do it like in a way that's profitable. But that's where we're heading, and it's not too many steps away to be like, well, what if instead of taking like cow cultured cells, we took like human cultured cells and they had like human salami. Like no human was harmed. It's just the cells growing in a test tube, but it was like cured in the form of cured salami. And just make it crazy. Like what if like it was a celebrity induced one where it's like Ellen DeGeneres has her own like human salami. It's like Ellen DeGeneres' cells. Would you
You
eat
can
them?
eat this celebrity.
Yeah.
This sounds like a short story right here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it does. It's like long lost PKD short story.
I don't think so. No, probably not. I mean, it's interesting, but it's
Only
not
if it
for
went
me.
viral on TikTok would I try it.
Probably would. Probably would. Maybe for the right amount of money. But I don't think anyone's gonna pay me for that. Do we wanna let's hit Web 2 though, because this was very interesting. Not by its cover. So this was also by PKD. Are there additional web stories beyond these two, Lillian? Do you know?
I don't think so. I was trying to look this up because I think these are the only two I've read, and
Mm.
I don't think the wub shows up in other stories or novels. Um, Possibly a passing mention, and like there's he's got a few novels that are set on Mars.
So the web in this one, and you can also find this one online with a little bit of Googling, um, is being skinned and used to bind high-end books. And in its webness basically ends up changing the text of whatever book it binds. Uh, Presumably to align with its own philosophy and theology. And so the characters have a little bit of fun binding various texts with wub to see what the wub says. Which kind of reminded me of like at the very beginning of LLMs, how we would play with like ChatGPT. Like, oh, I wonder what it'll say about this or this, you know? Um, and then the conclusion at the end is the guy's like, I want to be bound in wub when I die, so I can live on as well. And the ending of this story really stuck with me because the narrator basically just like comes in and starts like opining. The author almost like, well, I don't know what's gonna happen there, you know. And that's also not a style that you really see in stories these days. I don't know. How did you guys feel about this one?
I think that was just I don't think that was the narrator talking. I thought that was just he was like narrating uh the owner, the publishing manager's like internal uh
I'm gonna pull it up
monologue.
because I don't want to misspeak. But sorry, please go ahead.
But yeah, I guess I really like this story. I think it's so this was much later. So this was 1968, and I feel like it's it's more typical of like PKD's later style, where he's instead of like in the first story where everyone they're like spaceship crew, which is sort of a vague sci-fi profession, non like non-specific, right? Um, Instead, he has this little drama playing out in a workplace, in a very specific workplace where people do specific jobs. Um, and that's something that I think is really typical of PKD's work. He's like interested in the working stiff and what people do to like make a buck and how they interface with all of these like strange phenomenon within their roles as people, but also as like employees. Um, and I think it's I am a publishing professional. I thought it was fun to have basically I mean that like the main character that we're with through the story is the owner of this publishing business that's doing like you know special editions of Lucretius and the Bible and stuff. Um, but I think that the hero of it, like the most dynamic person, is a copy editor, and so I thought it was fun that like we had a hero who was working as a copy editor, as someone who has done that job. I like that.
It is a little. You can tell his proximity to publishing in that way. It's a little inside baseball. The way how he's like, well, if we're not doing swashbuckling spaceship, poachers, I guess we'll do people who work in publishing. Yeah, so okay, this is a very interesting Rorschach test. I'm looking at the very end of it. I don't know if either of you have it available to look at, but the last couple lines of this story, I would say it is very up in the air whether that is the narrator or Masters speaking or thoughts being represented. Because you've got the third to last paragraph, and he says, he thought then about his wub fur-lined coffin once again, far underground with him inside it, with the living wub fur growing. So unambiguously, that is Masters, because it starts with he thought. But then you have a paragraph break, and the line, it would be interesting to see the version of himself which a choice wub fur binding produced. You know what? The fact that it's himself, I think means that it is Masters. So I defer to your interpretation, Lillian, which is not how I initially read it. But that's not the narrator giving a judgment. That is Masters continuing to speculate on what the wub fur might do to him.
Yeah, I think himself is the critical word there. The
Yeah.
paragraph breaks though are, I think that is the authorial hand to turn it into a punchline, sort of.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, which is, similar to the uh, Beyond Lies the Wub.
And maybe because of the way the first web story ended, I just felt this incredible dread around that. Like, oh, Masters is in some way going to like damn himself to like wub hell by wrapping himself in wub, you know? Like it seems like the like one of the rules of like the wub logic is like the wub always wins, you know? So I can't imagine these guys who are like skinning wubs to use as book binding are gonna fare very well if they try to outwub the wub.
Sounds like the Wubs were on board. Uh,
I don't
yeah,
know. I mean,
I think, yeah, no, I think the Wubs they're not like malicious. They want everyone to have a good time in the afterlife.
but
maybe there's
weren't you
a
both
lot of
just trying
Wubs
to tell me
working at
that they
the Wubs
completely
cleaner.
overwrote the mind of the captain in Wub 1? I mean, that seems malicious.
It's self-defense, Cairo.
Sure. I guess so.
I think that last line. Now that you pointed it out, it would be interesting. The second to last, the penultimate line. It would be
Yeah.
interesting to see the version of himself which a choice web for binding produced. I don't know if this is what the author meant, but maybe on some level he was asking himself. PKD was asking, like, what would like a wubified version of my books, if my books were bound in wub fur, what like interpolations would be made?
I also wonder. It's funny. You can tell he's smart because he's trying to ask about the question of eternal life. That's what this whole web thing is about, eternal life. And it gets into, well, you kind of have to define what life is, you know? Like, how much can you change and still have enough continuity that it's you, quote, living, quote, you know? It's a good question. It's worthy of science fiction, surely.
Yeah, and this is actually, so now that I think of it, this is like this kind of creature is something that he returns to multiple times. Like I'm not sure about the wub itself showing up elsewhere, but like in he has a novel called Now Wait for Last Year, and there's a sort of similar creature on Mars, but it's like it's a Martian amoeba that is sort of immortal, but then it's used in some like horrific industrial process by this like fur and dye company that also does like makes like chemical weapons. Um, and there's like one member of this company that decides the amoebas, these immortal amoebas, deserve to like live on. So he like gives them a little um, like robot cart to pull around. Um, is very strange, but it's the same idea of like, is it, is there like an ensouled creature that can um have some measure of immortality, and uh
I
what
have
is
to
that life
ask
like?
because, when you had like the War of the Worlds, when you had these 19th century authors talking about Mars, even like John Carter, like before we had the ability to observe Mars in detail, we could project anything we wanted onto Mars. We can imagine it had princesses and monsters and, all that stuff. But by the 50s and 60s, we fully well knew what Mars was like. I mean, that it was basically just a red, barren rock. And yet, Mars seems to be, for a lot of these authors, to be like basically a catch-all for any weird creature or place. I mean, Bradbury does this too. Like, why were these sci-fi authors doing this thing where they were just putting all this stuff on Mars at a time when we knew that Mars was barren?
I Okay, so I had this exact same question. And so I looked it up, and it's been a while now, but I think there was not like there was a growing scientific consensus that that Mars was barren and probably not full of like aliens in the 50s and 60s, but I think we didn't know for sure that like there's basically no um atmosphere until like maybe the late 60s, or it was like in the 50s there was still a defensible, like you could have a setting where people are like walking on the surface of Mars.
Mm.
But yeah, I think that all reads as like very naive and sort of silly to us now, knowing what we know about Mars. But I feel like there's uh like something has really been lost because we're not able to easily like transpose human stories onto Mars or the moon,
Yeah.
for an earlier generation of writers. And it's something that I don't know. I like I said I wasn't going to talk about my novel, but my novel is set on Mars, and I've been thinking like it's kind of a pain in the ass to have to um create all these ways for, to describe all these ways that humans are able to be on Mars, and like, uh, domes and shit. And it's like, wouldn't it be like, it would be really nice if I could just have them walking on the surface. And
Yeah.
I almost wish we didn't know better.
There is sort of a before and after, that fog of magic gets washed away. You look at something like The Expanse now, and it's like that's sort of the state of sci-fi, or The Martian, when we know what the solar system is like, we can't impose our fantasies on it unless we're going so far in the future that it's been colonized, and then things have happened from
And like
there. I,
terraformed and stuff.
this might be useful to you. I hope it's not coming too late. I was working on a project set on Mars for a client a few years ago, and I found that there's actually an old version of Google Earth, like the app for desktop, where you can switch it to Mars. And you can basically do all this sort of like, I don't know if you already know this, but I found it very helpful as far as keeping the Martian geography straight, um, to do like the Google Mars app. So, pro tip for all you science fiction writers out there.
Yeah, I know that exists. I haven't actually used it yet, but
I mean, that's
um
why Interstellar had like a black hole in the edge of the solar system, right?
Yeah, and they put all the fantasy nonsense inside the black hole. Because that's
Yeah.
like the one part of the universe we still can project our fantasies into, is the inside of a singular.
Literally, something you can't observe without
That
going in.
makes a lot of sense when you put it that way, Like that's the last refuge for fantasy. Um I still don't like it as a story choice, but I get why he did it. Hmm. Well, very fun. The reason that I didn't want to do the Gibson is just because I feel like we've been talking about Neuromancer a lot. Or I anyway have been talking about Neuromancer a lot on different shows, so I didn't want to get too Gibson-y. But maybe on another one. I don't know. What are some other authors that you guys think it might be fun to cover in future episodes? Sci-fi or not?
I'm always down for another PKD book.
Hmm.
What else?
It would be kind of fun to do some contemporary stuff. I mean, there's always a risk of like talking shit about someone who's like gonna watch the episode. But any kind of like mid-list contemporary genre author would be kind of fun. As long as they're not like so beholden to the state of publishing that they're just writing like slop.
Are you against doing a book review of Scene Bucks?
Uh I think I'm a little too close to the subject matter to do a Scene Bucks review on this
Well,
show.
we
I
could
think
do
I
an
will leave that for
exclusive with
others.
the author.
Yeah, well, considering I don't even read like other people's reviews, like I haven't even read Lillian's review. I would say, yeah, that's a firm Rubicon for me.
See
Um,
authors.
no, we'll think. And you know what? Because we've got a few days, we'll chat. And if you are watching or listening to this, the books or whatever selection we pick for next month will be in the description of this episode. So go to futuristletters.com, go to this episode, and in the description you will see what we're going to do next if you want to read that. Um, I think that is a pretty comprehensive episode, and we've gone a bit over an hour, so certainly many times the length it would have taken you to read these stories if you just read them on your own. So if you haven't read them, I would say it's worthwhile. They're certainly a lot of fun. There's a lot more Ballard that I'd like to read. I know he's a very an author that spans a lot of different styles. So I'm sure we
I
can do
did,
another Ballard heavy episode.
yeah, I know in the beginning I was saying I didn't like some of his other like modes of writing, but I did reread some of his later stories uh like in the course of reading The Drowned Giant, and I like them more than I did when I read them like 10 years ago. There's like it's really strange stuff. Like there's a story called like the assassination of JFK as conceived as a downhill motor race. Um and there's a story called Why I Want to Fuck Ronald Reagan. Um and they're like funny and strange. And
Sounds like shit posting. Like if I saw those titles on like Substack, I'd be like, oh, he's like being a provocateur. He's shit posting. Maybe we'll say R.I.P. J.G. Ballard. You would have loved Substack. I don't know.
Kai, are you against having like movies or shows being part of the book
No,
review?
we could do a movie club. That would be very cool.
This is
Um,
one show that's been living rent free in my mind is Scavenger's Reign.
I don't know
Speaking
it.
of
I
like
unfortunately am not a
corporeal
TV
body
guy
horror
myself.
movies.
So give us the quick rundown.
Well, I mean, I thought about it because one of the themes of these three books is like body horror, right? Like
Yeah.
all three of these stories involve the body changing, warping, or like when one of them it's like a literal like a dead thing decomposing. The other one it's like you're eating yourself. The third one is wrapping yourself in dead fur and living forever. And so Scavenger's Reign has definitely the body horror element. It's sci-fi. It's about it's a show on it's on Netflix. So you can watch it on Netflix. It's originally like I think HBO Max. There's a bunch of these people on like a cargo ship that gets marooned on like a moon for some distant star system, and the planet's kind of alive. It's very like Mobius inspired in its artwork. Somewhat like Mobius meets Miyazaki in its artwork, and the planet itself feels like a character. Where it's almost like imagine a bunch of aliens like crash landed on the savannah in kind of this David Attenborough type, nature is beautiful yet harsh type of situation, and they're having to like they don't know what a lion is, but they have to like figure out how to not get eaten by one. um,
Yeah.
I'm not really doing it justice. It's one of those shows that has lived rent free in my mind for the last year since I watched it.
Where is it playing?
You can watch it on Netflix. Last I
Netflix.
checked.
Okay. Yeah, well, much to consider. And listener, if you like that show or go and watch that show, you can always find Kenny online and talk to him about it. Kenny, are you what is your you've got an X and a Substack. How do people find you?
Um, Substack is a good place. I check that a lot. Or both X on Substack. My account name is white_Scholes. I believe is there. Wait, now
Right.
I gotta double check my actual account name. Is there
But
an
if you search
underscore?
White
Yeah,
Shoals, you'll probably find him.
yeah, white_Scholes. Uh, that's me on X and Substack. If you at
Nice.
me or DM me, I'll almost certainly respond.
Excellent. Well, please do. He's a gentleman and a scholar. And yes, you can find me. You can find Futurist Letters. You can find the Ascari Productions newsletter, which is where I put my more personal work updates. You can also find me on X, Cairo A. Smith. And of course, Lillian, who is the founder and editor in chief of the LRB, that is the Lillian Review of Books, the LilRB, if you will. Where should people find you?
Yeah, mostly just Substack, Lillian Review of Books. I don't know, I have a website, lillianwangsalonic.com, but and an Instagram. I don't know. I'm mostly Substack these days.
Substack. And I think we're all very excited for whenever we get to hear about this novel of yours. I think there's a lot of hype. So we'll look for that maybe in 2026, depending on how things go with publishing, huh? Okay. Well, listeners, thank you very much for tuning in. This has been a nice little prefix of sci-fi selected by Chef Lillian. So thank you for the pairing. Certainly a lot to munch on and to wub on. And maybe I'm getting this strange feeling like we should talk about the Odyssey next. Uh no, I don't think so. But that's just the wub
Maybe
in me.
Lucretius.
All right, you guys have a good one, and we will see you soon. Later.